I just don't know. I just really don't know. What is it that they're trying to achieve with Teriaq Intense? I just don't know. I mean, it's not that I don't like the fragrance. I just don't know what the goal was. I can't figure out what the real purpose was of calling it Teriaq Intense. Are you even part of the same family? Like, are you guys like really not related? I don't know. I have many questions, but I'm hoping that I can answer them all because I have so much to say about Teriaq Intense. Hello and welcome. So today, guys, we have a very special video because you know that we are here to talk about Teriaq Intense. Now, Teriaq Intense, as we all know, was just recently launched maybe about a week and a half ago. And as soon as it was made available in the Lattafa USA site, I picked it up because, of course, many of you, as soon as you knew that this was coming, you started to request a review. Now, this is a fragrance that is, again, right, a collaboration between Quentin Bish and Lattafa. And you know, we could say that it is supposed to be a flanker to the original Teriaq, but to be honest with you, and we're going to talk about that in detail, I don't know if I could call it a flanker. But anyway, guys, so today my plan is to give you, of course, a detailed review of this fragrance, and then I'm going to give you a comparison between this fragrance and, of course, the OG. So I know that you guys have a ton of questions, and I know that some of your questions may be like, well, is Teriaq Intense redundant if I have the OG? You may also be wondering, how does Teriaq Intense really differ from the OG? Is Teriaq Intense just a bit more intense than the OG, but they're pretty much the same, or at least give you the same vibe? Does this one also give you that Jean Paul Gaultier label kind of vibe where you get like that leather note that was not pleasant for so many people? So does Teriaq Intense give us that same note, that very challenging note? Or has it been smoothed out, or has it been gone completely? And then, of course, the last question is probably, is this fragrance reminding you of anything? Is it giving you the vibe of any other fragrance? Does it remind you of any other fragrance? And of course, guys, my goal is to make sure that you get an answer for each one of those questions and more. But before we jump right in, if this is your first time here, I'm Arahi, and I'm your fragrance concierge because I am totally committed to creating the best fragrance experience for you. I upload videos multiple times a week, and in this channel, we love to talk about fragrances because we just want to smell fabulous at all times. We talk about Middle Eastern fragrances, Western niche, designer, affordable, scented body products, anything that we think will make us smell great. Now, if that sounds like the type of content that you're interested in and like a good plan, then please consider subscribing, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave a comment. Let's go, fam. All right, guys. So, we had at the beginning of 2024, unless I'm just mixing up dates now, but I don't think so. We had at the beginning of 2024, we had Teriaq. And this fragrance caused sensation, to say the least, right? It was hyped, it went viral, and I think that it is a really good fragrance. Some people did have a challenge with this fragrance because of that note of leather, which reminded us all of like the way that it was done in the Jean Paul Gaultier Label fragrance. So that right there was a showstopper for many people, and it actually stopped them from really enjoying this fragrance. But guys, now still in 2024, Lattafa brings us Teriaq Intense. Now, this one is also by master perfumer Quentin Bish, and I don't know if I should tell you right now how I feel about this fragrance, but we're going to talk in detail. So it is my understanding that this fragrance was designed to be a fragrance that, while being a bit more intense, it also makes use of the different materials or ingredients of the notes in more of a raw delivery. So it's not to say that this fragrance is not refined, it's just that it's designed to be less smooth, more of an intense type of approach to the fragrance. So Teriaq Intense for me, guys, is a fragrance that opens up very warm, spicy. And as part of that spiciness, and at least on my skin and to my nose, there are two dominant notes, and those notes are saffron and cinnamon, and they are quite powerful in that opening. But I have to tell you that the opening of the fragrance is quite nice. It is a fragrance that is very ambery, but at that, it has a tinge of vanilla, which I find interesting because it's not disclosed in the notes, but I do pick up on a tad bit of vanilla. Is it the same vanilla or in the same level of intensity that you find it in the OG? Absolutely not. And we'll talk more about that when I go into the comparison of both fragrances. And I'm going to go ahead and spray the fragrance again so I can just remember a couple of things. So this is a fragrance that in that opening of warm spiciness, the spices, even though they're very dominant, that saffron and that cinnamon are quite dominant, even though they're there, it's not overwhelming because there is a citrusness, a citrus quality that comes with the opening of the fragrance, which is very, very pleasant. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that some may interpret that as a fragrance that is really leaning more towards the masculine side, but we're going to talk more about that also in a minute. But just know that all in all in the fragrance, I am picking up a bit of vanilla. This fragrance, guys, for sure, this fragrance has vanilla. Now, is it as much as in the OG? Absolutely not. In addition to that, there is a, let's call it metallic quality to the fragrance that I do pick up on. And I have heard a couple of other content creators say that it's a bit of a metallic quality, but to my nose, it is quite metallic. But is it unpleasant? No, not really, because there is just something about the way this fragrance has been done. It is designed to be intense, but for me, it's not like the fragrance was designed to be overall intense. It is designed to have notes that within the olfactory journey go from minimal intensity to very intense, if that even makes sense. But I will tell you that something that is very, very dominant to me is that plum note. And it's not necessarily like a fresh plum or just a, plum fruit kind of note. No, it's definitely the liquor, because this fragrance to me is a boozy fragrance. Now, is it super boozy? No. Again, there is a balance. After a while, there is a balance even in the booziness of the fragrance. Now, I can tell you that at the dry down, you are going to get an exquisitely beautiful fragrance that is not most likely what you expected it to be, and is definitely a fragrance that, while being boozy and having a little bit of vanilla and that spiciness, there is an elegance and even a sexiness to this fragrance, which at least for me makes it more of a late afternoon into late night type of fragrance. So this is not a fragrance that I would necessarily pull in the morning, because I think it would be completely out of place. So while I currently can pull Teriaq for every occasion, day or night, I can tell you that at least to me, Teriaq Intense is a fragrance that was designed for a different type of occasion. There is a very sexy feel to the fragrance, and it does give you a sensual vibe. It's going to make you feel very sexy. Now, let me just go ahead and also address, is it unisex or leaning? Guys, to me, this fragrance is unisex. There is no lean in any direction. This is a unisex fragrance. Now, what I will say is, for those ladies who appreciate a unisex fragrance, but they don't really like it to be truly unisex, this is not the fragrance for you, because this fragrance is completely unisex. There is no lean to the feminine side. To me, there is no lean to the masculine side. It is really a fragrance that is designed to just give you a specific vibe, and that is of sexy, alluring, making you feel very sensual. That is what I think this fragrance is all about. Now, although this is a fragrance that you could get away with using all throughout the year because, again, in my opinion, it's designed for late afternoon up until very late night. Although that is the case with this fragrance, I have to tell you that I think this fragrance is best suited for the seasons of fall and winter. Now, can you use it all throughout the year? Absolutely. Personally, this is going to be a fragrance that I will probably pull and use it actually to layer with the OG during the fall and winter seasons primarily, because I find, and I will share more about that when I do the comparison, I find that Teriaq Intense does take the OG Teriaq to the next level. Being the fragrance that it is, I think that this fragrance requires a certain level of maturity. I really don't see a very young 20-year-old or an early 20s individual really pulling this fragrance off. I think that you do have to be at least 25, and 25 plus is best suited. And honestly, guys, I just don't think that this is a fragrance that is designed for someone in their early 20s or earlier ages than that. This fragrance has performed well for me, good, but nothing impressive. But, it's been my experience that with this type of fragrance, the longer they sit, the more that you will see a better performance or an improvement in performance. Right now, I can tell you that this fragrance only projects on my skin for maybe the first hour. And after that, it does become a skin scent, but it is a very strong skin scent that if I just put my hand to my nose, or if I try to sniff myself, I am going to pick up on the fragrance. But this is not a fragrance that right now is projecting much from me. Just during that first hour. This is also a fragrance that has not garnered any compliments. I have worn it twice, and I did use it one night for dinner, to go out to dinner with my husband. And typically that is the perfect setting for me to test for compliments, because everything from the restaurant team, right, the staff, all the way to when I go to the restroom, other ladies that may be there, because it's an enclosed space, then I'm assuming that they're going to be able to sniff whatever fragrance I have on. And if they like it, they'll give me a compliment. But that was not the case. I have not received any compliments. And when I first sprayed the fragrance on my skin and tried it, I was of course at home, and I was waiting for my husband to ask me what I was wearing, but he didn't. He didn't say that he liked it or that he didn't like it. He just didn't say anything, which made me wonder, oh my goodness, is this fragrance really projecting? Is it leaving any kind of sillage? So I just honestly think, guys, that this fragrance just needs to sit, because it was my experience with the Teriaq, the OG, that the longer it has been sitting, the better and better and stronger. But to be honest with you, when I first received the OG, I did not have to let it sit much for it to just perform. So this one is getting me no more than 7 hours, and that's with that skin scent. And towards the last 2 hours, it becomes a very intimate skin scent. That is on my skin. It may be different for others, but at least for now, that is what I'm getting. All right, guys, so let's get to the part that you guys are really interested in, and let's compare these two fragrances. And before we jump into that discussion, let's take a note at the notes of both. Now, guys, what is your first observation? So, obviously, guys, these two fragrances do not have the same notes. But at that, I am going to tell you something that I have not heard anybody say, and I am going to stick by what I'm saying. I am picking up the note of vanilla in Teriaq Intense, even though it has not been disclosed within the note structure. I am picking up a tad of vanilla, and the vanilla is reminding me of Teriaq the OG in parts of the olfactory journey and then at dry down. Now, am I saying that these two fragrances smell the same? They really don't smell the same, but I am telling you, it does give me a slight vibe of Teriaq the OG. Now, this fragrance, in my opinion, not just because of the notes, but because of my experience wearing it on skin, This fragrance is really designed to give you a different perspective or twist on the OG. While the OG is a fragrance that is honestly leaning towards the feminine side, and it is a fragrance that you can use all throughout the year for any occasion, day or night, that is not the case, and I'll keep saying that with Teriaq Intense. Teriaq Intense has a different occasion in mind for you. And it's when you want to feel sexy and alluring and just exude sensuality. That is when you want to pull Teriaq Intense. Now, that being said, if you ask me, well, is Teriaq Intense pretty much the same as the OG, just a bit more intense? Because that's what most of us expected. Well, guys, no, that is not the case at all. With Teriaq Intense, you are getting a completely different fragrance, which at times, and because of the way the vanilla has been done, will remind you a little bit, not even give you the same vibe. It's just going to remind you, but this fragrance is not this fragrance. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not even sure that I would call Teriaq Intense a flanker of the OG, because that's not how I see them at all. So I guess that answers also the question of, if you have the OG, is the Intense redundant? No, it is not redundant, but I just want to make sure that I set the right expectation for you, because I don't want you to pick up this fragrance thinking that you're just going to get a better version or a more intense version, or no. You are going to get a completely different fragrance that upon receiving it, you're going to have to test it and try it on its own to make your own decision on it, because you're really not going to be able to reference the OG to really assess this fragrance. So now let's talk about, how does the Intense differ from the OG? Guys, this is going to be a really short discussion. They are not the same fragrance at all. They're really not. I'm sorry. They're really not. And so does Teriaq Intense, have that challenging note that reminded us all in the OG of the Jean Paul Gaultier label, that kind of like leather note that can be a bit screechy and off-putting to many? Well, that I am not finding in this fragrance, because again, there's a totally different vibe in this fragrance. Now, there's a couple of other notes and accords that may be a little bit challenging to people. Again, you have to be into the note of cinnamon, and you do have to appreciate a spicy fragrance from the opening. And then the last question I think you would have is this fragrance, in my opinion, inspired by any other fragrance that I can think of? No, guys, not really. And, I've done a lot of research around that just to make sure. I may be wrong. I haven't sniffed every fragrance in the universe, but when it comes to this note structure, the first thing that my nose really picks up on is the cinnamon and the saffron, and then it's followed by that plum note, which is definitely a boozy note, and I don't have anything like that in my collection. So this one is not reminding me really of anything that I have in my collection or that I've sniffed in the past. Again, this is a standalone fragrance, and because it is a standalone fragrance and I have stopped trying to relate it to the OG, which is the expectation we all had, I'm now able to appreciate this fragrance. The only thing I will say is that I hope that with time, this fragrance does perform better, because that would be the only thing that would be holding me back from really enjoying this fragrance. How am I feeling about Teriaq Intense, and am I glad that I picked it up? So let me just summarize it for you, saying the following. When I heard that there was a Teriaq Intense coming, I knew that I was going to pick it up. And the reason that I told myself that I was going to pick it up without even trying it, without a sample or a decant, is because I really thought that it was going to be a more intense version, and maybe with a slight twist of the OG. But that is not the case, guys. And while at the beginning I was a little bit disappointed because I had an expectation, I have to tell you that the more I use this fragrance and I work with this fragrance, the more I have learned to appreciate it for what it is. The truth of the matter is that if you are looking to pick up this fragrance because you want it to be a bit more of or an intense version of the OG, please do not pick it up because you're going to be thoroughly disappointed. I really want to make sure that if you do decide to pick up this fragrance is because you are interested in really understanding that note combination, which is very interesting because there's not a lot of fragrances with that plum note. There really isn't, because it's a boozy plum note and it has been done beautifully. But I really think that in order to appreciate this fragrance, you have to be into a slight boozy fragrance that is also spicy. And the note of cinnamon, I know, tends to be a challenge for some, so you also have to be okay with that. Other than that, you know, the tonka, the bergamot, and other notes that are involved, honestly, they are just part of the blend and they go along the olfactory journey, but they are not the stars of any phase of the journey, and even at dry down. I also do think that for most, this may be considered a fragrance that leans towards the masculine side, but for me, it is truly a unisex fragrance. Now, as the fragrance sits and it intensifies, it may lean a tad to the masculine side, maybe, but honestly, I am telling you right now, I am not going to care because I am enjoying this scent profile, and I would really appreciate if it did intensify so that it would perform a bit better. All right, guys, so we have reached the end of this video, and I really do hope that I was able to answer all of the questions that you have around Teriaq Intense. And if you do have a question, you know where to find me. And I just have to say, guys, that this is a fragrance that I think is a very nicely done fragrance if you consider the purpose, right, behind it, the intent behind the design of this fragrance, right? It's not supposed to be like Teriaq the OG. That's just my opinion, and I stand by it. Anyway, let us know if you've tried Teriaq Intense and what are your thoughts, or if you're planning to pick it up. As always, thank you so much for hanging with me today, and I will see you all in the next video.